Today, we're going to cover some of the things that shocked me about Sweden, things I discovered when I moved here, and they might be deal breakers for some people who are actually moving to Sweden or thinking about moving to Sweden. So I hope you stick around to the end of the video. You find this interesting, give it a thumbs up, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and let's jump into it. My name is Shalika Marker. For those of you new, I was brought up in sunny Sri Lanka. I moved to England for 10 years, and for the last 16 years almost, I've been living here in Sweden. So the first thing that really shocked me after moving to Sweden was the ability to live a very anonymous life. If you've noticed on YouTube and you're into sort of discovering Sweden and Swedish videos, you will see that a lot of people are moving to Sweden and actually moving further up north to create these sort of very lonely, very meditative lives up there. Some people really like to be on their own. And I love that about Sweden. Now, I grew up in sunny Sri Lanka in an Asian culture where everybody knows everybody almost, and nothing really stays very private there. But in Sweden, you could just have a private life and nobody will be none the wiser. Now, you hear people talk a lot about sort of private space. The Swedes are very, very good at respecting one's privacy and one's private space, and that could lead to also a negative side. Swedes come across as unfriendly, but it also plus side to it. If you don't feel like talking to anybody, nobody's going to get offended. And I also think it's really great that nobody really cares. Divorce, families separating, that's their own business. Nobody will come to say anything to you. Maybe your closest friends, obviously, but those are the people you confide in. But in other cultures, it's not always the same. You feel like everybody else is up in your business, but some people like that sort of thing. Some people find that very family orientated and very open, and that they get support from so many different people. And then you have other people who like to keep those things really, really private. So that's hands down one of the things that shocked me in Sweden, that if you wanted to live a very sort of quiet life where you didn't have so much interaction with people and you like that sort of thing, Sweden is definitely a country that you should move to. Number two, the silence. In Sweden, you find pockets of silence throughout your day. Now, it got me wondering, there are a lot of people in a lot of countries, very rich people, spend copious amounts of money to go on sort of silent retreats and yoga retreats and healthy retreats. And, they go to these beautiful places in India and all of that. But in Sweden, we don't have to pay for it. You can find pockets of silence throughout your day, on the tube, on the bus, taking a walk, lunch break. You can just go for a 5-minute walk. Where I work especially, we have a forest close by. I could go to the forest there, spend 10 minutes in a meditative state and come back rejuvenated to work. You can also find moments in Sweden. We have something called fika here in Sweden, and you take them throughout the day. Now, normally fika is a cup of coffee with a baked good, and you do take a sort of break from work. It's a pause. In a lot of other cultures where they work a lot, use coffee meetings and coffee breaks, but you're doing work. But in Sweden, you have a specific coffee break where you don't do anything. It could be 5 minutes just to recharge your batteries and get back to work. It's very common in here. Sitting in silence is a huge thing here in Sweden. Silence is somewhat comfortable here. Now, I had to really learn to appreciate the silence. So, for example, when my husband's on the phone, especially when he's driving, I've noticed that I have a problem. He'll be talking to people on the phone, and obviously if he's driving, he'd suddenly be silence. And they will be silent and he will be silent, and I, sitting next to him, feel really, really uncomfortable. Like it's just silence in between and nothing's happening. But that is okay. It is the beauty of living in Sweden that everything is so quiet. Even the traffic, I mean, we have traffic and all of that, but it's a lot more laid back, a lot more quiet, even here in Stockholm. And if you go further north, it's just crazy how silent everything is. So if you're looking for a country to live in, where you can find these sort of beautiful pockets of silence throughout the day without even having to work on it, Sweden is definitely a country for you. Third thing that shocked me about Sweden, I was not prepared, was for the sheer amount of untouched nature that we have here. Now, Sweden is a long country. The nature in the north is very different to the nature in the south, as well as the weather. And it is just breathtaking. You can just go to the forest, even in Stockholm, in the middle of the city. 5-minute drive will take you to a beautiful forest area where you can spend time relaxing and enjoying and being one with nature. Now, the seasons lend to a really sort of different feeling every time you go to the forest in the winter and in the autumn and summer and spring months. We will talk about seasons in a little bit, but it is just so magical. The amount of beauty in the forests that we have. You can go berry picking and lots of animals, and it's just, I think it's gorgeous. And I wasn't prepared for the fact that I was going to fall in love with Sweden's nature so much. And I don't take enough time to be in nature and to enjoy all of the forests and beautiful parks. I do spend a lot of time in the forests and in nature when I go up to the north in our summer house. Number 4 is the seasons. I fell in love with the seasons from the get-go. I remember living in England, and the first Christmas I had in England, my mom didn't want me to spend it on my own. Now, she had some friends here in Sweden that invited me to stay and enjoy Christmas with them. So we're living in Sigtuna. Sigtuna is a quaint little village not far from Stockholm. It is so beautiful and it's so picturesque. And when I went there, they had so much snow. I had never seen snow before. It was just a magical experience. And after moving to Sweden, I have to say, I don't think I could live in a country without the seasons. The reason I love the seasons so much is because I love change. I do like things to stay the same as well, but I do like change. I'm the sort of person that never shies away from a challenge or a change in my life. I look at it as an opportunity to grow and develop. And that's what I did with the seasons. It is just magical. I mean, if we start with springtime, you get all the animals start to come out, the birds come in. And because during the winter, it's been so silent where the animals have been concerned. And when they start coming back in spring, you really are attuned to their sounds, to the noises of nature waking up. You really, really pay attention, which I think is just amazing. And then in the summer months, Sweden just comes alive. That's probably the time when it's the loudest in Sweden, because everybody's out, they're having ice cream, they're bathing the lakes, and trust me, the lakes are still cold in the summer, but people still do. They bathe, they go for picnics, different kind of food. You don't spend so much time at home. You're out with family and friends. It's just a lovely time. And then you transition to autumn when things start slowing down. It's a beautiful pace. The leaves turn this beautiful orange color before they turn brown and they cascade on the ground. It is just so magical. Mushroom picking, blueberry picking, you make jams, and you are just really prepping for the long winter months ahead. Autumn is hands down one of my favorite seasons. The weather gets cooler. Sometimes in the summer, it can be really very hot here in Sweden, but I love it so much in autumn when everything sort of transitions. And you can almost feel it in your body that everything just starts slowing down, the pace of life, and even nature, everything starts getting quiet again and really very, very peaceful. And then come winter. Winter is when everybody hibernates. All of the Advent lights come out, the beginning of Christmas, all of these warm stews and food that we have during that time of year. It really lends itself to being at home more, being with family, being with friends, really allowing you to be still during the winter months. I know some people find it dark and gloomy, and I don't. I absolutely love the transition. I think during the summer months, when I come home after work, the days are so long. The days are endless in the summer months, and my energy is endless. I want to come home and I've things to do and I want to clean up and I've got so much energy. But when winter is here and the darkness comes, I just feel like I want to sit down, curl up with a book. It really lends itself to a lot of me time and family time, which I think is just amazing. So the seasons, I could do a whole video on the seasons, but the seasons are definitely up there with the things that shocked me about Sweden. And finally, the fifth thing that shocked me about Sweden, and this one really hit the nail in the coffin when it meant that I finally felt like Sweden was my home. And that is how we bring up our children. I have been teaching young children for a very, very long time. And I've been interested in children for a very long time. And I love to think outside the box. So with all of those things in mind, even as a young child or young adult learning to become a teacher, I always felt like in Asian cultures, and while this is not for everyone, and there's good and bad in both cultures, I always felt that that leaned a little too strict, especially for younger children, because younger children start school so early. They all of this pressure so fast. You get young adults in Sri Lanka and all of these countries who can't cope with all of this pressure. And what if you're someone like me who doesn't like to study and you're not a very good academic? You get forced into that sort of culture, and as a child it's really, really difficult to maneuver, because obviously you compare yourself with other children and they're doing much better and you're not. But other things like dance and music and all of those things aren't always celebrated. Now we are getting better in Asian countries, but in Sweden I love the fact that our kids are so independent at a young age that they get to discuss, to talk. We try to trust our children more, learn to listen to them. I mean, really listen, not this sort of thing where children are seen and not heard. I feel like in Sweden, children are heard so much. In some instances, it can be too much. For example, sometimes when children come to school in the morning, and this stems from the Swedes having this sort of private space, that what happens is they don't want to say good morning to their friend. And their parent will be telling the friend who's just come running because they're so happy to see the child. They will say, oh, Max just woke up this now and he doesn't want to have somebody hugging him at this point. Maybe later, you need to give him some space. Where that is concerned, I think that's a whole load of BS. I mean, if a friend of yours is running to say good morning to you and wants to give you a hug, it doesn't take any effort or energy just to say good morning back. Now, the Swedes do take it a little too far, I think, but for the most part, I love that we respect children. We treat them almost as equals. We give them good, strict guidelines, but we are not in command. I don't like it when children feel they have to say doesn't carry weight. Now, I love that about Sweden, but if you are moving to Sweden and you've children and you want them to grow up in sort of a very hardworking, which drive and all of these academics, I do agree that that's also a good way to bring up children, but it sometimes can lean too much. But if you are leaning to that kind of education for your children, then Sweden might not be the country to move to, really, because here in Sweden, children don't have exams till they're in middle school, which I think is just fabulous. And they don't have to carry big backpacks, a lot of emphasis made on sports. It's just a whole different way of raising children here in Sweden. Now, all of these things, you need to find a balance. It's good and bad in everything. One of the things that really drove home to me that I was finally in a country where I could call my home, because the way the Swedes bring up their children, it really aligns with my way of thinking. So it is something that shocked me the most. I didn't expect it here in Sweden to find a culture that brought up children in the way that I had in my mind. And I'm mind blown and I love it so much. So I hope you enjoyed this video, listening to all of the things that shocked me in Sweden that I've come to enjoy. And I wanted to do this video because if you are moving to Sweden and you're a little unsure if Sweden is the country for you, I hope you watch this video and take away from it that these things I spoke about today are an integral part of the Swedish culture. You cannot get away from it. It is very obvious here once you move, especially if you're moving from an Asian country or from America. It's going to hit you really hard. So I really want you to think about these things, whether it's something that you want, something that you can live with. Otherwise, you're going to be depressed and you're going to feel down. So really make a decision, do your research, and make a very, very sound decision as to whether Sweden will be the right country for you. So thank you so much for being here. All you Swedes watching, please leave comments down in the description box below, and I will see you in the next one.